The Green Book was a travel guide, a pocket travel guide that was published for African Americans starting in 1936, and it was published until 1967. And, you know, during the era of segregation, as African Americans traveled, they had to deal with the fact that there were many places, restaurants, hotels, theaters, and so forth, where black people were not welcome. And in some cases, that simply meant you would not be served there. In other cases, you could be putting yourself in physical danger by walking into an unfamiliar place. So the Green Book was published, and it was based on travel guides that had been published earlier for Jewish people, because there were many places, you know, where Jewish people were not welcome. And so it was a way for African Americans who had the opportunity to travel to know before they went to an unfamiliar city where there was a hotel that they would be welcome, where there might be restaurants that they would be welcome, and so where they could have the services that you need and expect when you travel. The Green Book never lists restaurants for Birmingham, and probably because the information just wasn't provided to them. But the Green Book does list hotels in Birmingham, but no restaurants. So if you were an African American traveler driving into Birmingham looking for a place to eat, your best bet would have been to stop a black person on the sidewalk and ask them. City directories are wonderful resources. They're similar to telephone books, but they give you more information. And they're for cities like Birmingham, they were published every year. And for Birmingham, they go back to the 1880s and come up to now. You can look up people or businesses alphabetically by name, but it will tell you, in addition to listing a person, it'll give you their address, it'll tell you their occupation and their spouse's name. And from the 1880s up to the early 1950s, they also identify race. And so if a person listed there was known to the publishers to be African American, they would, in some years, they would put a letter C after their name for colored. Some years they would put an asterisk after their name. But that is a way that we now can identify many black-owned businesses and black neighborhoods. And also just identify what they were, because, you know, businesses let this come and go. There were black-owned restaurants in Birmingham throughout this period. And if you look just at one block on the 4th Avenue Black Business District in the 1950s, there were half a dozen restaurants. There were Meat and Threes, there were breakfast places. The most interesting one to me was called the Orange Bowl, which was a place that served fruit juice on 4th Avenue, and it was an African-American owned business. And so there were always restaurants there, and, you know, these restaurants would have provided economic opportunities for African Americans to own and run a business, for the people who work there. And they would also provide for their customers what we would now call a safe space, a place where you could go and feel safe and have lunch, have breakfast without dealing with the inconveniences and the humiliation of segregation, and without dealing with white people who could turn hostile at a moment's notice.